Hi, everybody, and thank you for taking the time to join me in this session today. My name is Shai Toren. I'm the CEO of JetPatch, and we'll be spending the next 20-25 minutes talking about what is self-healing patching. Think about it. You guys are doctors. You're doctors in a hospital that have to treat vulnerable systems every day. Sometimes tens or even hundreds of patients are visiting your ER every day. Clearly, your hospital capacity is limited, so you need the ER to prioritize and decide what is the required treatment. This is you guys from security, right? You are the ER doctors defining which vulnerabilities will be patched and which patches will need to wait. If you see cases, you see many cases and decide what to do, right? People are coming, you will send some directly to have surgery. These are the zero-day patching, and some will need to wait till the next patching cycle and then get the treatment they require. Either it could be configuration changes or hardening or patching. Many of them are actually being treated by patches. And some will be sent home. As you know, your hospital capacity does not have the capacity to treat them now. The IT ops guys, you are receiving these patients from the ER, from the security team, right? And either running the zero-day emergency surgery, patching, or submitting them to the right hospital ward, waiting to be patched. And despite the fact that you know a lot and you were trained for many, many years, you still encountered unexpected crises. And it's actually consumed most of your time, right? You sometimes need to go back to the surgery room and fix failures. And even when all goes as planned, you need to make sure no peripheral damage was done. Right? That's the testing. And that everything works as before. What you guys are running is actually a hospital. It's a hospital with an ER and with surgery rooms, and you are the doctors. It's a hospital with limited capacity. You invest a lot in prioritization to reduce the load, to be able to do the more important things, the critical ones. And at the same time, we are leaving the door open for future breaches. And some hackers take advantage of that. We are not dealing with the limited capacity and the employee burnout. We are staying in this endless, repeatable patching cycle. You are being hit by reports from the vulnerability scanners about new vulnerabilities and Patch Tuesday and different vendors that are releasing software updates all the time. Some of these patches are critical patches. Some of them are important patches. Some of them relate to the OS. Some of them relate to the application. And the first thing that you need to do is to do the risk and vulnerability assessment. And in this process, this is the ER that we talked about, you decide what will go further to the emergency surgery, the patching process, the hardening, or what you will not deal with right now, what you will leave in the queue for later. And in this queue, these are the open doors that we are living. There is a potential security breach hole. Imagine a world where wounds are self-healed, where the capacity is no longer a limiting factor, where you leave no doors open, where you stop chasing after your own tail. This is exactly what I want to talk to you about today. We do not need to wait. We can create this new reality today. And in order to do that, I would like to start with, I think, something that you guys all know very, very well. And this is the pain points that you're experiencing every day. And this is a very wide survey that was done by ServiceNow a while ago, not too long ago, asking people from IT, from security, what are the main pain points that you are experiencing? And a long list of pains related to resources and no shared view and critical system downtime and prioritization were mentioned. And for those of you who are here for more than 2 or 3 years in this world, you know, and you must have either participated or read some previous surveys or papers, you know that these exact pain were reported 3 years ago, and 5 years ago, and 10 years ago, and 15 years ago. It's the same old story, unfortunately, despite the fact that the world and the technology is moving forward. You keep on hearing about number of vulnerabilities that are growing, and you keep on hearing on the breaches that occurred while known vulnerability, and long time to remediate, and lack of resources, and all of that. And if we fast forward to this year, next year, it will stay the same, unless we understand why it is happening. You have a choice. You have a choice to continue to stay in the same status as, unfortunately, most of the world is doing, this chaotic situation, and stay with high risk, or do something different. And in order to understand what we need to do, I would like to start with looking at the data. So when we look at the data, we see that there is a lot of information that we can learn from that. For example, 60% of the breaches, more than that, a little bit more than that, results from a known unpatched vulnerability. And this is kind of an amazing, right? Because there is a known vulnerability, the vendor released a fix for that, this is the patch, you have the solution in hand, and yet a security breach occurs. How can that happen? Well, it happens, first of all, because look at the time it takes for an organization, a company, to patch a critical update, over 50 days. And a high risk is almost 3 months. That's amazing. It means that for 3 months, you have the door open and the vulnerability was reported already. We know exactly what it is. The hackers know exactly what it is, and they're just taking advantage of just this long, very, very long exposure time. When you analyze the data and you see, for example, that 75% of these attacks in 2020, last year, were they used vulnerabilities that were at least 2 years old. 2 years old vulnerabilities. So there is a lot of information in this data that if you just collect that correctly, and if you analyze, if you're using the right technology, you could understand exactly what is your status and understand exactly what is going to happen and what you need to do. We know that knowledge is power. There is so much we can know and act upon if someone or something will just point that out. What does people do when they are overloaded, right? They are saying, okay, we overload, we can't cope with everything, so let's just automate, right? But automation is not a solution. It's not a solution because if you do something and you hit a wall, automation would only get you to hit the wall faster. That's not what you want. So you need smart automation. You need a system that can learn what you require to do and modify its behavior according to that in real time. So these are the first two root cause for many of these pain points that people are reporting. You don't have the knowledge, so you are surprised by the expected, and you suffer built-in complexity or try to fill it with automation, but you're just hitting the wall faster. And the third reason, the third root cause for the situation is what we call the avoidance, the fear factor. Because we know that patching can cause problem, we either avoid that, and you see companies that are patching once a quarter, once every 5 months or 6 months, or you need to invest a lot of time and efforts in order to make sure that nothing had broken. What should we do? How can we create a self-healing patch remediation solution? If we only use the right technology and we use 3 steps, we can get there. The first thing that we do is we collect information and we predict based on the data what would be your success rate, what would be your patching success rate, and what do you need to do proactively to ensure 100% success rate. This is a very important thing. Remember, you are surprised by the expected. It's expected. If you know how to look at the data, if you know how to analyze the data, you can transform from being reactive to proactive, from repeating cycles to one cycle. The next thing that you need to do is that you need to have a governed, automated, smart automated, or hyper automated process that will take into account all the stakeholders, all the processes, and will run it smoothly. And the third thing is that you need to make sure that your performance are intact, that the business operation would continue as expected. Think about that as your ecosystem. I'm sure that your ecosystem is very similar to that. You have different discovery sources here on the left-hand side. These discovery sources contain a lot of information. More information that is relevant to the patch, either directly or indirectly, can be found in the vulnerability scanners that you're using, or in the repository that you're using, and in the application that you are running. The first thing that you need to do is you need the system to collect all this information and correlate that and process it to identify what we call cyber hygiene. Cyber hygiene is any place where you have discrepancies between data coming from different sources. These discrepancies are potential failure in the later parts of the process. After you identify the cyber hygiene, we are using what we call the predictive patching or the predictive analytics in order to find and understand what will be the patching success rate and what are the reasons for failures. Now, there are a lot of reasons for failures. Some of them are known, like very deterministic known reasons. Some of them are statisticals, but some of them are correlation that the system can learn based on the data that is being analyzed from the different sources. Data that is related to your specific environment, data that is related and is coming from other sources, and all this information, all this knowledge, if processed correctly, if collected correctly, is very, very valuable to the actions that you can do proactively. So these first two steps, the cyber hygiene and the predictive patching, will kind of shift left everything and will help you transform from, instead of being reactive and after the patching cycle, deal with all the failures, these two steps are transforming the way that you work from reactive to proactive. And by doing that, the system can tell you and ensure that you will experience one patching cycle, which will be very, very successful. After you did these two things, you then need to patch, and you need to execute that according to the process and in your own organization, including all the stakeholders, including all the dependencies, including all the dependencies between the team. So all this execution can be done automatically in what we call the zero touch remediation. This is the patching part. And the third part here is the performance, testing the functionality and performance of the application and feeding that back into the predictive patching. So the system can actually tell you, hey, you want to avoid deploying this patch on this group or on this application of this group of computers because we have seen a degradation in performance in this application which is running on that, and so on and so forth. This predict, patch, perform is the key for self-healing patching. You as a user, you as the person running the security, you as the person running the IT operation can have the system configured in such a way that the only thing that you need to do is just to sit back and approve the action that the system is recommending you to do. And by this predict, patch, remediation, you actually create a self-healing environment. If we look at that from a process perspective, the patching process, which start here and continue over here, most of the time and efforts that all of us are spending, and it doesn't really matter which tool and which process that you're using, is in this area here. It's in the later stage of the cycle, the patching cycle. It's around the execution, deployment of the patches and the fixes. This is very, very costly. This is very, very time consuming. So what the self-healing patching do is the first thing it is shifting left everything. Shifting left everything, because if you do something in the beginning of the process, it will be much, much cheaper and much faster. So if you collect the data, use the prediction, you transform from reactive to proactive, you shift left everything, and you ensure that this process will be smooth and fully automated. What do you achieve by that? You achieve a very fast time to remediate. You achieve, you close all these doors that you left open, and you free up yourself and your colleagues to do what you actually came there to do, to deal with the most important projects that you have and you need for the business. Predict, patch, perform. That's the only thing that you need to do in order to get to this situation of a self-healing patchwork. Happy to take any questions now, and thank you for joining me in this session.